What's up, guys? Welcome to the Rescue Michigan weekly live stream. No cold open tonight. We've got a lot to talk about. In fact, we will be having our regular weekly live stream, the one we talk about news and World War III and stuff, tomorrow night instead, because tonight we've got a Lawstream. We've got a lawsuit to read through. And joining me tonight is our almost co-host, Shane Trejo. How's it going, buddy? You were at the Trump stock this weekend, which I missed, but you were there. So how was that?
It was pretty good. I mean, for a lot of these conferences, you kind of see the same speakers say the same messages, and there was that to a certain degree. But there were really interesting, good breakout sessions where they were talking about really encouraging people to become, poll watchers, poll challengers, to get out there, chase ballots, and become, involved as precinct delegates and do the work that's needed to clean up the party and really. Sending people in the right direction, which is, we see a lot of grassroots people being misled, smoke blown, where the sun doesn't shine, for so many different activists who are being, misled or led astray. But Turning Point Action is really doing a good job of keeping people focused on what's important. So it's really hopeful that, thousands of people are going to go back to whatever state they're in and know exactly what they have to do to win in November.
I hope so, man. That's one of the reasons why I didn't go. And by the way, the sponsorships were astronomically expensive, so that's one reason I didn't go. But there's always that concern. It's like a 3-day conference of just the amount of. I've been to a lot of political pep rallies. It's not my cup of tea anymore. But if they're telling people how to knock on doors and be effective and win the race, good. And there was, I think, one huge great thing that came out of that. And if this was done intentionally, and by the way, nothing in politics is done unintentionally, then salute to Turning Point USA, because that was JD Vance and that straw poll that came out. In fact, I'll bring this up on the screen. But Vance, obviously he's a U.S. Senator from Ohio, so right nearby where we are. And of course, in Detroit's only a short drive from Toledo. And he ran away with a straw poll, which is a very, very great message to be given to Donald Trump right before he has to pick who his running mate is, because there's some bad actors contending for that spot right there. And the fact that JD Vance would probably have an advantage go at this Turning Point conference to get this coming out of the straw poll. And here's the results. 43% for JD Vance compared to Tim Scott in a distant second at 15.4%. Followed by Marco Rubio, who is pro-amnesty, a neocon, pro-war, and was a component of Trump's in the 2016 election. Somehow he's in the running. I'm sorry, Shane, go ahead.
Yeah, when I saw Charlie Kirk speak at the Blexit thing, which was on Thursday night, he said that it's between three people right now: Rubio, Doug Burgum, North Dakota governor, who for some reason is now being pushed as a guy who.
I was going to get to him too. Yeah, he was in the poll. Like, what? This was the guy who was trashing Trump. Why?
Yeah, and I guess he's got some deep ties to Bill Gates and not a very good. But we're now he's like supposedly such a great guy and being pushed as like this leader who needs to be the vice president. So smell a rat there. We obviously know Rubio sucks. It's between those two and Vance, according to Charlie Kirk. And there was a guy who had a Trump Vance 2024 T-shirt, and Charlie Kirk said that he's going to get Trump to sign it and going to personally, tell Trump that that Vance should be the guy. So I think Vance would be of the three supposedly final candidates. I think he would be by far the best choice out of those three. And the Turning Point crew is very much behind Vance, and they had him give the last speech of the entire conference. Another interesting thing was Alex Jones was there. I got a picture with him. Everyone's telling me he looks like. Everyone's telling me I look just like him.
It's probably not a good thing these days.
Yeah, I'm like.
Back in the day, though, I just happened to rewatch Dark Secrets Inside the Bohemian Grove, which is like from back in.
They brought him on stage, and he got the hero's welcome, and
nice.
People were just yelling all the talking points. So it's really good to see he's getting. Even though, he's getting screwed over so much with the junk lawsuits and the ridiculous judgments, he's still getting more of a mainstream following within the conservative movement, shows that the conservative movement under Trump, despite some faults with Trump's endorsements and other things, it's moving the needle in the right direction toward liberty in a general sense, I think.
Great crowd too, by the way. Yeah, there's a lot of people there. Yeah, there was a shot. I guess
They
2,000
said
people.
13,000 people.
How many?
13,000 is what they told me. The organizers told me.
Wow, that's amazing. The news media said
Impressive.
It was only 2,000. Imagine that. They were lying. Who would have thought?
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing Trump did, of course, this weekend was he came to a black church in Detroit, which got some. I mean, I think that's important. I think that's meaningful outreach. I think it's good that he did that. In fact, we did something very similar with Ron Paul back in 2012. And in fact, I mentioned this to Trump's campaign staff a few weeks ago. I have no idea if that had any influence on him or not. They probably would have thought of this anyway. But the day before the primary in 2012, we had Ron Paul speak at, and we found, I shouldn't say we, the dude, David Dudenhofer, who's been a guest of the show. He's a Detroiter. He found like the right place to have Dr. Paul speak. It was this church, Little Rock Baptist Church. Jim Holley was the reverend there, and he runs his own like inner city school for high school dropouts. And Ron came and spoke to them the day before the primary, gave the same speech he gives everybody else, and he won in the primary in 2012 in Detroit. He got more votes in the city of Detroit than Mitt Romney and Rick Santorum combined. So that does matter. And Trump doing that work, I think, is meaningful. And especially as, well, the media has been, quick to point out that, and people have said, I think 50 Cent said, black people see in Trump that he's been a convicted felon because he's been railroaded. Like, yeah, they're doing to him like they would do us. If we didn't know better, we'd think he was black. So that's all good imagery for the campaign.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of momentum that seems to be coalescing behind Trump right now. When he needs it the most, obviously, there's going to be some October surprise type things coming up in the months to come. So you can't underestimate the establishment and their willingness to bend every rule, do all kinds of immoral things to make sure Trump loses. But there's a lot of reasons to be very, very hopeful that he's going to be able to win in November, and why we should be out there as poll workers, chasing ballots, doing everything we can, leaving it all on the table to make sure that he does win.
Well, last time the FBI kidnapped Gretchen Whitmer, or they were planning to. Who knows? Maybe next time they really will kidnap a governor. There's nothing they won't do to win the election for Joe Biden. They're that sick. But anyway, more about that kind of stuff on tomorrow's stream, which will be our regularly scheduled program. But tonight, we have a lawsuit, and this is for the and by the way, for those who don't know, this is one of Kristina Karamo's lieutenants who has been stalking and harassing a longtime conservative activist. And people are probably thinking, well, first off, why are we talking about this stupid lawsuit? Because it's just personal drama. Well, first of all, it's entertaining, and secondly, because this is real stuff, guys. Like, while serious people are going to grassroots leadership training to get out the vote to win the election for Trump because they care about that kind of stuff, the Karamo cult, all they care about is power. So while you're out trying to win the election for Trump, they're recruiting precinct delegates to overthrow the GOP, to overthrow you. And the stuff that we're going to see in this suit is emblematic of the tactics that we've seen elsewhere from these people all over the place. And in fact, and by the way, this is not someone off. This guy, this is the guy on the left here, CJ Ritchard. He calls himself. His name is spelled Richard, but he says Richard or Richard. I don't know. And then of course there is with Kristina Karamo, former chair of the GOP, although he still insists that she is still the chair. And apparently has a personal vendetta against some folks in his community who happen to think that Karamo was not a good fit for the county or state party, rather, and has decided to stalk and threaten and intimidate them for the past, year and a half or so. So we're going to go through that lawsuit. Although, before we get to that lawsuit, though, I have to talk about this Nick Rekieta stuff, because you and I have known Nick for a long time. We mentioned this on the show briefly because, first off, Nick is the grandfather of a lot of this kind of streaming. In particular, we're going to be reading through a funny lawsuit, which is where Nick's show started, was reading through these crazy lawsuits. And it's almost like a genre on the internet now of crazy stuff people say online becomes funny when it turns up in court proceedings. And I don't know if you were a day oneer, but like the first Nick Rekieta show I saw was his very first stream when he was reading through this lawsuit brought by this internet talk show host against this other internet talk show host. This guy, in fact, on my shirt, you and I went to see this guy, Dick Masterson.
Yeah, and we went to see Dick Masterson's live show in Minneapolis, and you were saying, "Oh, there's Skyward
Chicago and Minneapolis." Yeah, we met Nick in Minneapolis, and he was we didn't meet him at the time, but he was at the Chicago show too. And since then, I mean, first off, Nick has been an hugely influential YouTuber, not just and I shouldn't say YouTuber because he's also on Rumble now. I think he's a Rumble partner, but not just in covering the news, but in shaping the news. And the first story was that case he got involved with, but then the one after that, there was a big story involving this voice actor who got Me Too'd, and he ended up fundraising from his exposure of the case, the guy's legal defense. And it was a defamation suit, just like the suit we're about to read, which involves defamation. And I was on his show twice. The first time, I believe, was to promote the cause of Lucas Gerhard. That was the Michigan college student who was wrongfully charged with terrorism for making a joke about his rifle. And Nick brought huge exposure to that case, and in doing so, fundraised for his legal defense in a huge way. And in the final act, demanding to cover the lawsuit and the trial in court, very likely led to that judge basically telling the prosecutor, give him a plea deal and get this out of here. I don't want to have courtroom cameras in my courtroom covering this stuff, because they already knew where that might go. And then the second time I was on Nick's show was just before the 2020 election, because we had just we just had a lawsuit against Jocelyn Benson. In fact, there's some news about that. We got to talk about that too. There was a lawsuit against Jocelyn Benson when I had recorded this poll worker training where they had told us basically use COVID rules to impede poll challengers. And we filed suit. Well, I've had lawyers who are actually Lucas Gerhard's same attorneys find some parties to file suit against Jocelyn Benson. And again, we went on Nick's show and exposed that and said, hey, this is a huge story. Got to talk about it. And Nick did. So I guess the point being, Nick is like a guardian angel to people. And he is now in a very bad way. I don't know. I don't know if you've watched his show recently. I had not seen his show in like a year or more. I think just because it stopped being interesting. The topics they're covering weren't as exciting anymore, which apparently turns out he's been kind of off the rails lately. And so he was charged with, substantial drug possession, let's put it that way, and associated charges because he also had firearms in his household and things like that. And I don't know what to say. I'm trying to think through what to say. I don't know if you have any thoughts to get out there at the moment, other than to pray for the guy. But he's streaming again now, which I can't imagine is a good thing. But what do you do? Because streaming is his life. It's awful. He's got three sets of problems. He's got a drug problem, he's got a legal problem, and he's got a business problem. And the thing is, and Nick better than anybody knows this, he is an attorney. He knows when the heat is on, you got to shut up. But he's got a show, and now he's the topic. And so he has been streaming again privately-ish, which is not really private, like on locals. Which I mean, why not just stream in public? Because it's not like he's gonna escape the eye of the courthouse when he's got so many enemies out there from all these cases he's taken up, and talked about.
But a lot of what I saw was that he was getting involved with a lot of these sort of weird influencers and their online drama and their toxic behavior. And then, you have all this money, you have all this fame, might go to your head. It might, if you have, problems with substance abuse, it makes it easier for you to buy a lot of those substances. So I think things really started compounding in a bad way for him. And, hopefully, everyone should send their prayers out to him, because he has done such great work in the past that, this can be a wake-up call. But the way he's responded seems like he's doubling down. He didn't do anything wrong. He doesn't see anything wrong with his behavior, and that's not a good sign that this is going to get anything anywhere but worse for him before he hits rock bottom, and who knows how bad that could be.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen opinions varying on the internet about this kind of stuff, and I mean, first off, I think the last thing in the case has been is attorneys filed motions for discovery, which is what every attorney would always do in any case involving this kind of stuff. And some people on the internet, notably Robert Barnes, have been suggesting, oh, we can get this dismissed. The search warrant was improper. Maybe, but first off, I don't think it's a tenable position that he doesn't have a drug problem, because we could all see it. I mean, Nick was, to begin with, a scrawny guy. He's very tall, very, very scrawny. He has health issues already. He's narcoleptic. He has some kind of issue like cardiovascular issues. He's talked about these on his streams, which had a drug problem on top of that. And you could just tell from his appearance, like what he looked like. And those are not unserious. I mean, those are separate from the legal issues. And even if you can get off on any kind of technicality, legitimate or illegitimate, any kind of reason to get off of a charge, more power to you. But it's not going to be held against you to go to rehab. That will not happen. If you might win your case anyway, probably still good to get clean. Probably. And if you don't win any kind of challenge to the search warrant or whatever, the court can't hold against you that you challenge the search warrant. But they still might. But if that doesn't work, it still really looks good if you get healthy. But yeah, he's done like a couple of streams now, and I couldn't finish them. I watched one of them, and it's there. I mean, you can tell it's all very awkward, and I can imagine. I mean, maybe I say I can't imagine, but he's like standing up the whole time, which is weird, and talking, but trying to talk vaguely about the issues, and it's just like, this is. I don't know. I haven't contacted him. I don't have no advice for him. Other than, stop doing drugs. start going to NA or AA or both. I think they're the same thing anyway. And take care of yourself and your family and get well. And fuck the internet and fuck the money. That's the most important thing.
Yeah, the internet. I mean, a lot of these weird subcultures on social media are extremely toxic and extremely bizarre, and you should not get sucked into them. Don't go down those rabbit holes. We're seeing, some of that QAnon stuff and what it's done to our movement, those weird online subcultures. So you cannot get sucked into these things, because they can ruin your life and then exacerbate, problems you might have already had or predispositions you already had, compounded with money, and then your life spiraling out of control. So pray for Nick Rekieta. And hope they can get his life back together, because he has done so much great work in the past. The legal streaming kind of niche is a great niche, because it's getting people interested in the law. They're learning more about, concepts. They're learning more about ways to fight for their rights, and understanding the system. And more people will, potentially be inspired to go to school and become lawyers for civil liberties. So that's the sort of thing that we need. We need good legal streamers like that to make people interested in making a positive difference and fighting back for our rights through the system. So pray for Nick Rekieta and his family, and hope that he'll come to the right conclusion, get the help he needs, and get back on track.
Yeah, I completely second that. Of all the people I saw, and I've seen lots of people in Nick's orbit on the internet talking about this, and I think one of the best takes was from Andrew Branca, who has the show The Law of Self-Defense. He is the self-defense legal expert in the country, and basically he was just like, look, very few people can dig themselves out of this hole when they get into these kinds of drug problems and legal problems, but Nick can be that exception. But he has to want it. And I think on the opposite end of that spectrum, the worst thing I've seen is like Robert Barnes going out saying, "Oh, anyone who," and by the way, he's attacked people who have expressed the views we just expressed, because they're all throwing Nick under the bus, and the Constitution says that this is a conspiracy. and it just goes on and on and on and on. And it's like, if you can beat that search warrant, that's wonderful. But I wouldn't bank on that. And it's not going to solve your drug problem, which, anyone who's not, I mean, if you think he doesn't have a drug problem, you are delusional, you're ignorant, or you're a liar. And that's just the way it is. And, he needs some kind of intervention, and it's not going to come from the internet. It's going to come from his family and friends.
He's going to be unfortunately enabled by a lot of bad people on the internet. Who'll be telling him what he wants to hear, trying to get some of his money or fame or clout or whatever, or just, happy to kind of piss on him as he's going down the drain, thinking it's funny. So he's going to be.
Well, the other thing too is he's also going to get lots of bad advice from his enemies, because he's got plenty of those, and it's easy to just lump everybody. Anyone who's just saying you got to get help. You've got guys like Barnes saying anyone who says that kind of stuff is not really Nick's friend. They're all just grifters. They all just have to get him. They're all frauds. They're all liars. They're all phonies. They're all leftists, and yada yada. And the reality, guys, is Nick should mean a lot to all of us because of what he did for Lucas, if nothing else, for that reason alone. And we really should pray for his recovery. Anyway, but I guess we'll just see what happens. So, and I hate to say it, we're not going to cover this on an ongoing basis, and cases like this can take months or years. But we will do is do what Nick would do, which is to have a lovely reading of a lawsuit, and we shall see where that goes. Real quick though, Mark Ashley Price asks, who won the position for Michigan Republican National Committee woman? That would be Hema Polana Giretti, not the other one, who apparently still thinks she's won. Oh, real quick, before we get to this new lawsuit, which is absolutely bizarre. Since I did mention that I was actually on Nick's show 4 years ago to talk about a lawsuit against Jocelyn Benson, which we won, but there was no follow through. Benson defied the court's order. It wasn't a court order. She signed an out-of-court settlement to change her policy not to impede poll challengers, notify election officials that they were not to do that. And of course, she never did that. They impeded poll challengers anyway. The rest is history. Well, today we have, or rather this week, we have another decision against Jocelyn Benson. This one on the signature match policy, which is so funny because in the past 2 election cycles, we've had 5 Republican candidates for governor, I believe it was, thrown off the ballot for signature matching issues. We've had at least several candidates for state house, state senate, Congress, and U.S. Senate either challenged or thrown off the ballot for signature match issues. Because the Democrats are that brazen, folks. At the same time as they continue to maintain that we'll never need to check election signatures for absentee ballots, we'll happily throw Republicans off the ballot challenging their signatures anyway, because they're hypocrites, and they can get away with it because the media never calls them out on it. But a judge has ruled that Benson's signature non-matching requirement is unconstitutional, and here is what he says. The court declares that the initial presumption of validity in signature verification of absentee ballot applications and envelopes mandated by the December 2023 guidance manual issued by defendants is incompatible with the Constitution and laws of the state of Michigan. For similar reasons, the court declares that the catch line, referring to initial presumption of validity in this court rule, is incompatible with the administrative rule. That's what that is. That's not a court rule. That's an administrative rule. Is incompatible with the Constitution and the laws of the state of Michigan. Accordingly, these provisions must be excised from the guidance manual and the catch line in the rule. And because the court has ruled the plaintiff's favor on the merits, the court need not rule on this other thing too. So there it is. Now, the follow through is you guys got to become poll workers because if you don't, who's going to verify the signatures if you don't? So if you haven't already, you can hop on over to rescuemichigan.com and scroll down to that link to join the election protection team and apply to be a poll worker. And, actually protect the elections. Now that you have a court decision, we have to enforce it. So that's how that goes. And
Yeah,
Shane,
one
by
of
the
the
way, you've got an
things.
article about this.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly. So yeah,
let me
pull that
let me
up.
bring this up. Yeah, we'll pull this article. This is your latest in big league politics. Bigleaguepolitics.com. And I guess you've met attorney Eric Cardall. I met him at some event in Washtenaw County several months ago, maybe a year ago now.
Yeah,
But tell us about Eric.
Yeah, he's a attorney based out of Minnesota. He works with different groups in the state of Michigan as well. Does lawsuits based on election integrity, and we've seen so many election integrity lawsuits that were thrown out, very poorly written ones by attorneys who don't know what the hell they're doing and make us all look stupid. This is not that kind of attorney. He's won over 60 cases on different issues, and he was going through all the different things that are happening right now. The successful lawsuit of Shelley Lake to obtain lists of past qualified voter lists from other townships. The RNC successful challenge of Benson that you just talked about for signature verification. These states removing themselves from the election registration information center. States banning Zuckerbucks, all these different things that are happening, all these little victories, they add up, and we're more successfully pushing back against the lawfare that the Democrats are coming at us with. I think we're getting smarter. People are learning from their mistakes, and we are in a better position to fend off the fraud. We know they're going to cheat. They're going to do everything they can to stack the deck against us, but we're in a better position now. We're much more prepared to be able to fend that off, and that'll make it more easy for us to win in November. We just need to stay optimistic and come together. And Cardall's talks about building the best possible case you can with the facts and within the law as it's currently determined, the precedents that are currently on the books and the current laws that are on the books, not wishing for a new legal regime and basing your lawsuits or your challenges based on speculation or fantasy. Going with the hard facts, the hard details, and doing your due diligence before arguing this sort of thing, whether it's making the points to people that you meet in person, your friends, or hitting doors or whatever, making these sort of points, or in lawsuits, you have to do your due diligence. And Cardall does that in a way that is as good as any other attorney who's out there working right now. So it was great to speak to him. He was also he was also one of the people who was doing breakout sessions at Turning Point Action. So they were getting a lot of good. I didn't attend that one, but
it's funny when I was not going to the event, I didn't even think of the breakout sessions. I thought about just there being a bunch of rallies. I was like, I've been doing enough rallies. But yeah, no, good. He's with is it the Thomas More Society? Is that right?
I think he was formerly with them. I think he's somewhat affiliated with them. I think he just kind of has a private practice that he does his own thing. But one of the groups he works with here is Michigan Fair Elections. And, we've, Rescue Michigan's partnered with them in the past. And I know Patrice Johnson, she's appeared on this podcast. She's a good friend to the cause of liberty. And she's another one who you see in a lot of election integrity groups that, they stray from the facts and they shoot themselves in the foot. They support lawsuits that are the road to nowhere. A lot of crackpot sort of schemes that never account to anything, and conspiracy theories and QAnon. You don't get that from Michigan Fair Elections. They do their due diligence. They have serious activists. They have good, well thought out plans to actually stop the fraud and are doing a really good job in the election integrity movement that has been at times, very embarrassing. But they're doing great work on that front. And if you want to do election integrity work in Michigan, that's probably the best place to start is Michigan Fair Elections.
Yep. And of course, become a poll worker, guys. Like, there's rolling applications. You should, use our website to at least get connected to the people who are organizing them, but also you apply at your local clerk's office. or multiple local clerk's offices. You can apply in Detroit. You can apply in Ann Arbor, any city, any township. They're the ones that hire. County governments do too, although usually that's for like absent voter counting boards, but some of them also do need too. But yeah, any place where you think fraud might be likely, i.e., any Democrat stronghold area, any college town, Detroit, Flint, Saginaw, Union Boss places, Lansing, they need poll workers, and they're required by law to have an equal number of Democrat and Republican poll workers, although they often don't. But make sure you do apply. Mark Ashley Price says, Rescue Michigan is awesome. Thank you, Mark. Big League Politics is awesome. Make sure you also check out Shane's work at Big League Politics. And Jason Mickelberg says, checkmyvote.com to audit your address. Yep. Also, you can just contact your local clerk's office too. Patty Peace says, can't work in your own municipality now because of printing ballots on demand. It may be for EV, electronic voting. What? I don't follow. And I'm not entirely... Maybe, Patty, we can talk about that tomorrow night. We can elaborate on that. We'll talk more about these things tomorrow night. How about that? But now, for the main event, we have a brand new lawsuit filed, and this is against... Well, here, let me pull it up on the screen. Early voting, she says. Yeah, you typically can't be a poll worker in an election where you are actually voting. Or if you're a candidate. Like, if you're a candidate for precinct delegate, you can't be a poll worker in your own precinct in your own primary election. But there's plenty of other fish in the sea, guys. There's lots of local elections offices, so there's no shortage of places where you can apply. Anyway, so let's bring this up here on screen. Why are these things in my way? Here we go. All right, let me make this bigger here. I thought I had redacted things, but apparently they just pop out when you scroll. Shrink this down a little bit. Andy Siebold and Bree Mogenberg. The plaintiffs, the defendant is Charles Ritchard. That's how he pronounces it, I'm told. Not Richard, Ritchard, but okay. And this is the case. It was just filed recently. And here we go. Andy Siebold is an individual residing in Oceana County, Michigan. Bree Mogenberg is an individual residing and conducting business in Isabella County, Michigan. They may collectively be referred to as plaintiffs. Defendant Charles Ritchard, a.k.a. CJ Ritchard, a.k.a. Chuck Ritchard. Him referred to as defendant, or Ritchard, is an individual residing at, that's his address. The transactions that give rise to this cause of action occurred throughout the state of Michigan, including but not limited to Oceana County, and the amount exceeds $25,000. That's just to get to a court, and the jurisdiction is proper. I don't think I'm going to dispute that since both sides live in Oceana County, or at least part of both sides do. And here is, yeah, he says, AKA Chucklehead. We'll be talking a lot about nicknames tonight, guys. This is buckle in.
CJ loves having a lot of nicknames, and a lot of which just don't even make any sense. So we'll be getting
CJ also loves posting things on Facebook. In fact, you and me know about CJ Ritchard going back further than the Kristina Karamo business. Because I remember, and I was trying to find on Facebook, before Kristina Karamo was chair, there was Ron Weiser. Before Ron Weiser was chair, there was Laura Cox. And I remember Laura Cox was going to retire from being the chair and let Ron Weiser become the next Republican chair. And then, shortly before the convention, and the reason why some people think she might have decided to quit is because she was not going to win anyway. And then right before the convention, she decided to drop back in the race and claim that some terrible crimes were happening involving Ron Weiser. They had to be exposed. And it did not save her candidacy to invite Jocelyn Benson to investigate the state party. It did not help. Turns out that's actually not good when you're trying to be a GOP chair to attack the party. But she knew about it for years, but then waited till that last possible minute to cause as much trouble as possible. For whatever reasons that you can look at what her husband
Mike Cox writes on Twitter. He's an anti-Trumper. He hates the Trump movement. He doesn't, he wants to go back to the good old days of Rick Snyder and Mitt Romney. So I think it's safe to presume that those are her ambitions as well for the GOP.
So in that brief moment when Laura Cox and Ron Weiser were competing for state chair, CJ comes out and says that Ron's a criminal and yada, yada. And he says, and I was trying to find this on Facebook, but I couldn't because he posts on Facebook like 100 times a day and I could not scroll down. Somehow to even write this lawsuit and to capture the Facebook posts we're about to see, they must have gone through thousands of these Facebook posts. This guy must spend his entire life on Facebook. Hence the AI.
And you see it, where he sidles up to Kristina when he sees an opportunity, sidles up to Laura Cox.
Well, the thing that's so funny too is like Laura Cox is as establishment as they get. Her husband Mike Cox was the attorney general in Michigan. She was a state representative running for state senate, while she was also the chair. In that same year, she lost a state senate seat, lost a state house seat she was representing, and also, or had previously represented, and also that was when the congressional seat flipped too. But Laura Cox, I'm pretty sure she's friends with Ronna Romney. They're both from Northville. They're like neighbors. They've been involved in party politics forever. So CJ says, I was going to run for state chair myself, but I'm going to support Laura or something like that. I was trying to find this. That was my first introduction to CJ, was as one of Laura Cox's lieutenants. But now he's not, a Laura Cox establishment cheerleader or paid operative or whatever he was. Now he's the anti-establishment grassroots champion for Kristina Karamo. And as we'll see in a moment here.
I got a story about CJ.
Go ahead.
One time he, there was a rally. He was, bullhorning Steve Carra, alleging that Steve Carra paid money for a Trump endorsement. Completely unfounded nonsense. So he's bullhorning Steve Carra. He's trying to give a speech against the will of the organizers. So just being combative and disruptive for no reason but to draw attention to himself and to gratify whatever weird agenda he has. And then afterwards, Steve came up to him and like gently touched him on the shoulder and was like, hey, let's have a conversation. And then he starts crying about how he was assaulted, how Steve assaulted him. And he was a victim of assault and he's going to file charges and Steve's going to jail and blah, blah, blah. So that just shows what kind of person we're dealing with here. Is we're dealing with someone who just wants to make it all about themselves and push these bizarre vendettas on social media. I know a lot of people have said that, they think he's a Fed or connected to the Van Andel family. I'm not going to speculate on that, but it's clear that
I don't know either.
His MO is that he wants to draw attention to himself and use these conflicts or exacerbate conflicts and drama to do it.
Yeah. Patty says Mike Cox is suing Plymouth Township on behalf of the Carlo brothers in Northville Downs, alleging extortion by Kurt Heisey. We've talked about Kurt Heisey at other moments on the show.
If Cox is
maybe all on good,
Heisey, a lot of times, in these local political things, it's like different various douchebags of similar stature kind of muscling each other for turf. So that's probably what that's about.
Yeah, and who knows? He might just be hired to be an attorney. So, whatever. Good for him for taking on that case, I suppose. Louise Cordier says, or Cordier, I don't know how you pronounce it. Laura Cox is worthless as chair during the lockdown years. She sure was.
And she did jack shit about election integrity, too. There was no preparation. The MIGOP was just sitting on their hands in the lead up to the 2020 election. So there was nothing being done. She was just hapless. She had no plans. She had no vision. And that's a big reason why we were caught with our pants down in 2020 was because of how incompetent Laura Cox was. Also, Laura Cox she was handed the MRP chair by consultants and by Ronna Romney McDaniel.
That's right.
Yep.
It was Ronna before her.
Platter after leaving the state a safe state rep seat that she would have won. She ran for state senate, She didn't knock one door. She didn't do shit. She loses the state Senate seat. Then the state rep seat is lost as well. So because of her, 2 winnable seats were lost. And then she was gifted the state party chairmanship because of her connections to the establishment. That's Laura Cox.
Yeah, it's weird losing a House seat, a Senate seat, and a congressional seat somehow entitles you to becoming the state chair. But that's the crazy thing was CJ started that whole narrative right from the get-go that Weiser was the bad guy, and that played out all the way through. Meanwhile, Weiser donates millions of dollars, funds the Unlock Michigan campaign, puts in Mashawn Maddock as co-chair, empowers the grassroots like never before, and all they do is shit on him. Like that's the grateful Republican grassroots for Ron Weiser's charity and passion for changing the way the party was operating, and that was what he got for it. Anyway, so this has been on the screen for a while, so now we know who Bree and Andy are. And on February 18th, Kristina Karamo was installed as the chairwoman of the MIGOP. It's a funny choice of words. She was elected, but whatever. I still like it that they use that just to irk them a little bit. And so here we go. In the summer of last year, some members of the state committee, including the plaintiff, started to discuss the disarray of Chairwoman Karamo due to her reckless leadership, lack of transparency, potential misfeasance, malfeasance, and nonfeasance, which culminated in the discussion and ultimate removal of Chairwoman Karamo. Ritchard is an ardent supporter of Karamo and one of her strongest salutes. He would often post on Facebook praising her leadership and deifying her as a person sent by God. The MIGP bylaws said that in order to remove a member to the floor, blah, blah, blah. They're talking about how you remove Kristina Karamo, which they ended up doing. And I was happy to help with that. To interfere with this process of gathering signatures, Ritchard started a defamation campaign against plaintiffs. On January 29th of this year, certain plaintiffs filed a verified complaint for declaratory relief in Kent County Circuit Court. We've talked about this case. This is the Grand Rapids case. Plaintiffs were not one of the plaintiffs in that case. The case was assigned to Judge Rossi. On that same day, the plaintiffs also filed a motion for temporary restraining order against Kristina and a preliminary injunction. After hearing, the court granted the motion for the preliminary injunction, set a trial date, and opened discovery for the parties. Bree was called as a witness in a deposition in that case. And there's an exhibit. There's nothing to the exhibit, just the signature page entitled to show that she was indeed a witness in a deposition in that case. Since that time, last May, 1 month ago yesterday, Judge Rossi granted the plaintiff's motion for summary disposition, making that preliminary injunction permanent. We haven't looked at that final order yet. We do have it, by the way. Maybe some other day we'll cover that one. Louise says, and she was elected, Kristina Karamo was elected by a majority. Don't you ever forget. Yep. And she was removed by a majority of committee members that showed up. Ritchard has made multiple defamatory social media posts about Judge Rossi. See Exhibit 3. Let's look at Exhibit 3, shall we? This will be fun. Oh, look, I'm at the bottom. Let's go to the top. Exhibit 3. Meet dishonorable Judge Joe Rossi from Kent County. He needs to be thrown off of the bench. He had a direct financial conflict of interest and connected with DeVos and Hoekstra, yet he still ruled with Hoekstra. We need to have everyone filing with the Judicial Tenure Commission. He had already predetermined the outcome in spite of solid fact. Is this judge a member of the Dark Unicorn Society? Do not re-elect Judge Rossi. That was 1 month ago. Dishonored Judge Rossi, puppet of the DeVos clan with a K. And in another post, God is calling each and every one of us to stand in the gap against this evil. Today we saw a corrupt Judge Rossi from Kent County bringing shame, insult, and corruption to the judicial process and making all Catholics and supporters of the University of Notre Dame tainted. Judge Rossi is a lot like Joe Biden, and a disgrace in his demeanor and judicial activism from the bench. The role of the judiciary is clear, but Judge Rossi and his supervisor, whoever that might be, are guilty of violating the judicial canons, and appropriate charges need to be filed. Judge Rossi's neighbors need to be made aware that this neighbor has issues and needs to be kicked off the island and out of the neighborhood. Oh, good. So they're accusing him of corruption, telling people to contact the Judicial Tenure Commission, saying his neighbors need to kick him out of his neighborhood, needs to be made uncomfortable in his home, and also trying to weaponize the Catholic Church against him. He should be excommunicated. His conduct was not only unbecoming of a judge, but lacked clarity, reason, and objectivity. The simple base point was that the hoaxers broke the bylaws, and that was enough to can the entire process. Bree needs to be sued for as much money as can be recovered. Time to start multiple points, a la Sun Tzu. And here is an Ezekiel quote from the Bible. I don't think the Bible said wanted, but then it says intercessors, those who will stand in the gap before me, interceding on behalf of their wicked nation, so I may show mercy instead of wrath. And this goes on and on for a long time. A tainted judge, clearly under the influence of DeVos and Secchia money. This I would have probably put into the complaint, like cited directly in the complaint. Don't make him go to the exhibits to read this stuff. Put all this attacking the judge, defaming the judge right in your pleading. That's what I'd have done. Make the judge read this. Make the court read all that stuff. Anyway, still excellent, though. That's a great opening right there. Ritchard wanted to intimidate plaintiffs from gathering signatures and also intended to discredit their efforts through his defamation campaign. Some of Ritchard's false, libelous, and slanderous statements have included but aren't limited to the following. Here we go. Oh, Don Beatty says, reach out to me as well. If you want to sign up to be a poll worker, I'm recruiting them as the regional election integrity director for the party in Macomb County. So there you go. Find Don Beatty on Facebook if you are interested in helping secure the election in Macomb County. And here we have some lovely Facebook posts from CJ. Ritchard stated that Andy Siebold and Bree Mogenberg were, quote, cavorting with and hanging out with criminals, and criminal behavior seems to become the norm for the R2D2 officials. This is only the start, guys, of him just throwing in these weird nicknames that you won't be able to follow. So, District 2, R2D2, like the Star Wars robot guy. And this is going to go on and on and on. You will have to rack your brain to follow these names he gives to everything. Ritchard then stated, well, guys, I'm a gun owner and a constitutionalist and a friend of the militia. So, yes, you should fear us because we come armed with the truth, but I won't waste my money or time supporting juveniles like yourselves, akin to the BLM, that lack reason to only seek to destroy. Juveniles, are they? That's a weird one. That's like, it's like, people, often you'll hear the term juvenile delinquent, meaning like a minor who's also a criminal. It's like he doesn't know that juvenile is like the minor part. I think he means to call them criminals, but he doesn't know what juvenile means, so he just calls them juveniles. Anyway, Richard then stated, he also thinks he would have learned his lesson on drinking at his last run-in with the law, but apparently having a high-powered attorney to get you off worked. The question about who paid for it still lingers in the quote-unquote dark. I wonder if she dresses up regularly and entertaining the kids. Look at this attached post from Larry Zeka. I don't know how to pronounce his last name. An associate of Siebold of the D2 committee, or R2D2 as I refer to them, who himself is under legal trouble, operating as Larry the Logger or Loggerhead. It appears he and others are conspiring against me for getting facts out. This group has shown action similar to the BLM and maybe using a similar funding source while disguised as the 2nd District Committee. I previously reported Bree Mogenberg to the FBI for her attempts to character assassinate Jason Hall, Ken Licari for personal threats, Michon Mad Duck for assault, grabbing my arm, and Doug Lee for verbal assault. I'm sure the FBI appreciated that outreach. Maybe you should spend more time with your good R2D2 buddy, Larry the Loggerhead, or hang some new curtains for your friends Bree and Andy. I don't even get what that reference is. The curtains from their Zoom meeting look like they borrowed them from a local brothel, and maybe they did. Now, a lot of this stuff is just shit talking on the internet, folks, and is not really actionable, but I think they're setting the table here because there are some things that are a little too far across the line. Randy Guppy is laughing. Randy Guppy. Yes, Randy, you're in here. I've been wondering as I was reading through these, I was trying to like scroll through these thousands and thousands and thousands of CJ posts on Facebook to get to that one from 2 years ago. I gave up. I couldn't do it, but I was wondering, like, he's got to have a name for it. I have to be here someplace. How have they spared me? And you, Shane? What's his nickname for you? Does he have one? Has he used you?
No, he's trashed me in the past. I mean, he says that, the Grand New Party, or he calls it the Grand No Party.
Oh, that's good.
We're working in concert with all these villains, and we're all evil and we're all getting money from Wiser and blah blah blah, that sort of thing.
Yeah. I don't know if he spared me or if I just haven't seen it because I'm not on Facebook. I really would probably the reason why I don't know about it is because I just haven't looked.
I'm
Anyway.
pretty sure he's trashed Rescue Michigan before, if not.
Oh, I bet he has. John Rocha. Where's John's nickname? He's slacking here. And Randi Gupai that support Andy and Bree, spelled like the cheese, Dealey are just as guilty. Kristina is still standing tall in spite of the attacks from these fake Republicans that are clearly working against her in coalition. There it is. The Grand No Party, the Democrats, the R2D2 Star War crowd, including Princess Leia. That's Bree and her new beau, Jabba Ass-Seabolt. Bree has shown her style and poor taste with 3 different outfit changes, none of them using her scrap curtain remains. This guy is obsessed with Bree and what she wears, interestingly. Ass-Seabolt wore shorts and that chic slob manner of dress that won me a bet with a friend. Both Ass and Bree have shown a lack of class in an area where decorum is keen. By the way, just remember, speaking of class and decorum, this is the guy we're talking about on the left. where class and decorum are keen. That's how CJ
he wears the red glasses too everywhere. That's some sort of bizarre vendetta he has against Diane Schindelbeck. And Diane Schindelbeck is, she's run for state rep. She's a big time Trump supporter out on the west side.
It's weird because if you don't know that, then that just becomes his style.
Yeah, so now it's this, he wears them everywhere, and it's just some bizarre thing. And I do know that there was a PPO filed against him for alleged harassing things that he had done to Diane. So this is
CJ
not the first
harassing
time
people. No,
he's had to go to court over something like this. This is not the first time he's been brought up in this lawsuit of this sort.
Yeah. By the way, since I'm crossing this page, I forgot to mention Matt DePerno is the attorney in this case, who of course was an attorney in the Kalamazoo case, and who, by the way, is also in the news this week because he's running for Michigan Supreme Court, which I don't know what to think about that. Apparently, he is not running against either Fink and Boonstra. Andrew Fink and Mark Boonstra are running for a seat, which is like a full term, but he is not running against them. There's like a long term and a short term. I guess he's running for the short term, whatever that means. There's another guy running for that term, and I've met the guy, but I don't remember his name or have an opinion about him, so I don't know. But anyway, this goes on. Many hide from blah blah blah. Constipationalists, very clever, full of crap in themselves. Let's even get to something. This is all, by the way, not exactly actionable, so we got to get to something better than this because this is all just name calling. Although it is funny, it is funny. Bree Mogan Davidberg likes to use DSM-5 terminology, yet she is not licensed for anything except childcare. I thought I would share the DSM-5 updates. This group with members like Ass-Seabolt, Bree, John Rocha. Oh, he got John that time. Roach, get it? Randi, Gupai, and Larry the Loggerhead really do fit in the categories defined, including the newest distinctions. This group were identified as Squat 2, the same MO as the KCOP disruptors. Their lack of moral character. Who's he calling a disruptor? Pot me kettle. Actually, that's not correct because there is no pot. This is the disruptor. Anyway, where's this going on? Blah, blah, blah. We can skip through some of this stuff. Although this goes on. I mean, there is a bit more. If you want another 30, 40, 50 pages, I don't know. There's a good bit of it. How many pages is this? I can't even. Why is 65 pages?
Kind of connecting this to what I saw at the Turning Point Action Conference. There are a lot of people from all different factions of the MIGOP there, and it seemed like all of them did not want to fight over what had happened with regards to Kristina, and they want to put that behind them and win in November. That seems to be what people are concerned about, and guys like CJ who feed off the division and want to cause conflict as a way to bring more attention to themselves and build themselves up. They will, they're not going to have as much oxygen behind their attacks and what they're plotting, because people are not wanting to have these fights over and over again. They know that we can actually win in November. That's what they want, is to win for Trump. So that's the good news, is that, his following is going to be dwindling, because people don't want to be, not many, only a small handful of people want to relitigate these fights over and over again when there's real work that can be done to save our country.
At risk of being accused of relitigating these fights by talking about this lawsuit, however, first off, as I said before, yes, it's great to focus on winning the election, and we're all trying to do that. But at the same time, remember, these guys are trying to take over the party, and they're going to be busy doing that while you're busy trying to save our country. And I think Pete Hoekstra is like, let's just move on. Well, Pete, I mean, it's great to move on and win the election, but you got to think long term, because they're going to be back. They're going to be back, and they're coming with that Constitution of theirs. We've talked about this in a previous stream. They have a rewritten Constitution for the Republican Party of Michigan, which does not have a Constitution currently, because that'd be weird, but that's what they're going to do. And it's absolutely batshit crazy, and it's written to make it impossible to ever have a grassroots party ever again. So it's a real threat. Anyway, and also, as we'll see in a moment here, this does get very serious. Right now, it's still a bunch of name calling, more name calling, more name calling, more name calling, more name calling. All right, let's just keep. You guys can read this on your own time. It's in the description on YouTube and Facebook. Also on Rumble, by the way, Cisco's 1 gallon says Bill O'Grady is running for the 4-year term on the Supreme Court. So there you go. Bill O'Grady. That's the name of the other candidate that's competing with Matt DePerno. Someone in the news asked me what I thought about Matt DePerno running. I was like, I don't know. Like, what do you think his odds are? I don't know. I don't know do you have any thoughts on that, Shane? Who are the new crop of precinct delegates? Are there going to be more establishment people, or more grassroots people, or more crazy people?
From what I've seen, that there wasn't like a huge slew of new people. I think a lot of people were turned off, unfortunately, by the infighting the past couple of years, and a lot of people didn't re-up. But I didn't see a huge slew of new people that I would think are going to come in and be insurgents and try to, avenge Kristina or whatever. I didn't see any of that. I don't feel like that's a huge threat right now. But if Trump loses, there might be a lot of despair, and then those people might be able to capitalize on that and someone, maybe Kristina again, who, no real qualifications, but will get up there and preach to the choir and say the things that people want to hear. So that's definitely a threat, but I don't see, in terms of numbers, that being an extremely high possibility right now. And the establishment now is pretty much dead. There's like only a handful of people.
Yeah.
A lot of the establishment people just do not like Trump so much. They don't like the direction of the party under Trump, that they just have kind of dropped out, and they're not really involved anymore because they don't like it at all. And Trump has kind of become the new establishment in a lot of ways. And that's good and bad. We could talk about that. We talked some bad things, like the Mike Rogers endorsement coming as a result of that. But it's also, I think, kind of neutered some of the more hardcore establishment people, the more really Mitt Romney moderate type people in Michigan. They're really just a non-factor at this point.
Good. Barry Altman says, it's incredible how tone deaf some leaders can be. The 13th CD chair, Cheryl Constantino, is literally calling people and telling them not to talk to me. I'm suing her, and she got Alexandria Taylor. Interesting. Alexandria Taylor, former Democrat, candidate for sheriff in Kalamazoo County, I think it is, or I don't know where. No, in Kalamazoo, it's Sabrina Evans, who's the new sheriff in town, or won't be. Jason says the crazies are bringing more. Paula Nacky says 8-year term Boonstra and Fink, 4-year term O'Grady, Alexandria Taylor. Oh yeah, that's right. The woman who was a Democrat like 2 years ago wants to be a Supreme Court justice, and Matt DePerno. So there you go. Everyone's saying,
it's cool that people are former Democrats and they're coming over to be Republicans, and that's great. But the fact that you were a Democrat as recently as 2 years ago, and now you're running to lead the Republican Party, that seems presumptuous at best, and at worst, maybe you're still a Democrat. Maybe you're trying to do something that is infiltrating or subverting. But yeah, definitely should have more than just 2 years of being a Republican if you want to run for a serious leadership position.
Yeah. Kelly Danielle says, I can't think of anyone more deserving of this lawsuit than CJ. Absolutely lunatic. We've only just gotten started. Jen Lawless says, every Republican will know DePerno is the Republican nominee in that race. One of the biggest challenges in judicial races is that the candidate's party is not listed. I'm not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I don't know. I don't know if about O'Grady to have a strong opinion. I stand by everything I've ever said about Matt DePerno. He has been good on a lot of things and bad on some other things. And we will leave it there for now.
Adam's coming around.
As I said, I stand by everything I've ever said about Matt DePerno. All right. I scrolled through a lot of these already because, again, this just goes on and 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 on, which is great because it's making the rest of us this shorter and we won't be here all night reading this stuff. But there you go. That's all Exhibit 4. The above statements constitute defamation, defamation by implication, and defamation per se. So this is very important, by the way. Defamation per se. And let's back up. And this is, by the way, this stuff that Nick talked about in these major suits he was involved with. A lot of judges don't know defamation law very well at all. And that makes the defamation suits always very difficult. In typical defamation cases, you have to show a lot of things. You have to show damages. You have to show the intention to do harm. And here's a couple of tough parts. One is, if the person who is the target of the defamation, in this case, Bree and Andy, are public figures, you have to show malice, which means a reckless disregard for the truth, and intention to do harm. The idea being, you wouldn't want people popping off about Gretchen Whitmer and Dana Nessel all being able to be sued for defamation because they're public figures and people will talk shit. It has to be a certain level of malice. The problem is, often judges will really expand that definition that was originally only intended for politicians. And it got expanded, especially by Hollywood, to celebrities. And all the time, people can say, oh, judge, they're a party official, they're a public figure. And now you have that whole additional burden of showing malice. However, on the other hand, another problem that you often have with defamation is that, name calling is not defamation. And it's really hard to show damages. How can you prove that this has done more than $25,000 worth of damage to Bree and Andy? That's difficult. But if it's defamation per se, which means if you call somebody a pedophile or a felon, or say John Roach was dishonorably discharged from the military, that's called defamation per se. That means you don't have to show damages, because presumptively saying someone is a criminal, saying someone's a pedophile, those things are automatically defamatory. And that makes it easier to argue your case. Otherwise, you got to show damage, which is very, very difficult. How do you argue that someone lost business as a result of CJ's shit talking on Facebook? It's not easy. That's extremely important. Now, most of this, I didn't see defamation per se, but we skipped over a lot of it. So the words to look for are typically calling somebody a criminal, calling someone a felon, calling someone stupid or a duty head or psychologically deficient. Not enough. But let's see what we have here, and we'll get to this because there's more to cover here. Here we go. Oh wait, no, there's another blob of Facebook post. Where did we leave off here? Defamation per se. Okay. After the plaintiff did a cease and desist and demand for retraction and demand for preservation letter, Ritchard continues his venomous defamatory attacks. And this goes on. And this is so they're establishing to the court that they have given him notice to stop doing what they're doing. It's another important defamation element. You have to, and the rules vary from state to state, but typically you have to show that you've made an attempt to stop them from lying about you, and they still continue to. That goes to recklessness too. So this goes on, and again, more name calling. And again, I'm not going to read this all word for word, unless you see people. Oh, Don, were you in there somewhere? Don the Bull, were you in there somewhere? If you guys really want me to, we can read these, but there's a lot of them. They'll be here all night. John the Cucurocha.
How many people actually read this shit though? When he posts it on Facebook, it can't be.
Well, you see the likes. Yeah, he posts a lot of shit, but I don't know. Like I'm just scrolling through his Facebook feed. I saw like people who are on state committee. Darlene Dotes was like liking his posts. I mean, they're out there. Anyway, let's skip down a bit. Okay, here we go. More and more. We'll get to the part where they actually name the elements of this that are defamatory per se. Okay, Ritchard repeatedly claims he works at the FBI. Okay, that's important. By the way, here's the more posts. Here's the cease and desist letter. I can put the exhibits in the description too if you guys want to see this stuff. So this was their letter. Again, citing more of these Facebook posts. And what have we here? I thought this was it. Exhibit 7. CJ Ritchard. Oh, works at FBI, GRM, and CI. Huh. I wonder what that's doing there. On May 4th, 2024, he said that Friday saw me launched on another mission, which I gladly accepted to work with the Chicago crew. It soon will be revealed that maybe then the likes of Bet on Me, Breeze, and her stooge, that cockroach guy, along with her grandpa, Petey, and the legal beagles, the firm of Wolk, Turdswell, and Foolahan, and Liar Pernod. I know who some of these people are, but what's the point? I mean, it's so esoteric. It's not. It doesn't work when people don't know who you're talking about. Or WTF and L will understand exactly what I've been up to. Kristina is still the chair, and PDO, that's Huckstra, has some stability problems, has been committing fraud in every letter he sends, stating he is the MIGOP chair, which means PDO has been violating a judge's order and committing mail fraud. So that's defamation per se. Exhibit 8. And there it is there. And there is some more. See, so to your question, Shane, yes, so it's covered up by us here, but Tessa John, let the shock and awe begin. Time to take these crooks down. And there's some people liking the post. So, I mean, some people believe this crap. On September 8th, 2023, Ritchard claimed he reported Bree Mokenberg to the FBI. Supra. Same exhibit. On December 4th, on a podcast at the 1804 mark, Ritchard claimed, I'm bringing the FBI in on it. I'm bringing the FBI in. They will be on it, honestly. Link to the video. On March 12th, Ritchard claimed he contacted the FBI. On March 14th, Ritchard claimed again that Mokenberg has already attacked me, and that went to the FBI. On March 19th, Ritchard claimed he had contacted the FBI. On March 25th, 2024, Ritchard claimed he had filed felony charges against plaintiffs. On April 20th, 2024, Ritchard posted a video on Facebook stating he is working with the FBI. This video has been deleted. Footnote, link to where the video was. And again, on April 20th, Ritchard posted another video on Facebook saying he's working with the FBI. This video has been deleted. Okay. There's another link to that down there. On April 22nd, Ritchard stated on Facebook, I am tired of having to use the FBI to back me up, or the various police departments like Kent County Sheriff, Kentwood Police, Grand Rapids Police Department, and most recently the Oceana County Sheriff, the U.S. Attorney's Office, and the Post Office Inspector General's Office, Exhibit 10, and that is going to be him saying these things. So saying repeatedly he's an FBI, he works with the FBI or works for the FBI, he's reporting to the FBI. It's not entirely clear.
Adam, can you bring up Carl Kirsch's comment? So he says, since you're on the name calling, once we separate the crazies, Rhino establishment over Trumpers, do we have enough people to elect a conservative person Absolutely, because Rhino's establishment never Trump. This is a small group of people who are basically all the same people. They're getting driven out of the party. They're getting driven out of the mainstream. And then when you get rid of those people, the corrupt people, more independents and people, which is the fastest growing group, will want to come on board and support Republican candidates, ones who will actually stand strong on the issues. And then, like we talked about the crazies earlier, that, now is people are not, don't want to relitigate these fights. They don't want to go back and have these same fights over and over again. They want to be focused on the things that can be done to actually win in November. So that's the focus now. So all this ugliness, we might want to bring this up just to kind of show, what's been said by CJ and this handful of people, just kind of highlight how crazy some of these people are. But some of these posts have maybe 10, 15 likes at the most in most cases. And, a lot of the people who were supporting this stuff are now just focused on winning in November. So it's going in the right direction. It's not going to be easy in all these different factions. All the factionalism doesn't make it easy, but we have a real shot here. And if Trump wins in November and we get some stronger Republicans elected, I think that's going to make it easier to gloss over a lot of the ugliness that we've had to endure over the past couple of years.
Yeah, if you go out and knock on doors, or you campaign at a polling place and you see voters coming in, you don't see CJ Ritchard. You see a whole ton of normal people. Where you see the crazies is in the party in the party politics, where they're trying to recruit precinct delegates because it's so easy. It's like, oh, just get a bunch of my crazy friends, and we can overthrow the county party because there's only like a few people who are really involved and engaged. And that's why they go to the precinct strategy to become precinct delegates, to take over the party. That's what this is all about, is making it easy. Do you think this guy on our screen here, CJ Ritchard, who's writing this, hold on, how do I, okay, yeah, just highlight this. Do you think this guy's vote is critical to winning the election? No. This is dead weight. This is not helpful for us. This is harmful. And it's a big distraction. It's a huge headache. And it's a headache that's causing more and more people to leave the party. That's the problem, guys. I've had 3 people in my county executive committee quit because they can't stand the emotional abuse of dealing with these crackpots. And they're just like, you know what? I just want to walk away. And it's the easiest thing in the world to do. It's just to walk away. But if you do that, you leave the party to them. And that's why we lose. So you can't just sit. I mean, this is the reason why we're covering this stuff, guys. It's probably because it's funny and it is entertaining. But in another way, it's also painful. But if you don't fight, you let them win. And some of us have to say, no, we're not going to let them take over our party and destroy it. We're going to stay and fight. Kelly Danielle says, I have an entire file of comments I saved where CJ claims to be working with the FBI and threatening other Facebook users that he will report them to the FBI. Excellent. Send them to Bree and Andy. Margaret Kurzweil says,
I gotta jump off.
Your discovery can hardly wait.
I gotta jump off at him, but thanks for having me, man. Peace.
Hey, man. Thanks for joining me, Shane. It's been fun. And always welcome back on the stream anytime.
Sounds good.
Ernie Guppy says, it's all the same people liking his posts. I doubt they even read them. Maybe. Reading's not their strong suit. Oh, as a side note, and also just to underscore the fact that these aren't the only people out there. I sent out an email blast a couple days ago talking about our candidate survey, which we'll talk about a lot more tomorrow night. Our candidate survey program. You guys probably got that email. You're fans of Rescue Michigan. Talking about how we're going to survey all these candidates for state house, talking about these important issues and this and this and this and this and this. And then I got an email from somebody last night. I'm going to pull it up. I'm not going to put it up on screen. I'm not going to say who it's from. But this is someone who's been on my email list for the past 2 years. Adam, why do I not see messages about trying to secure our elections? Maybe I missed it. We need a massive push for poll watchers and election workers, and your platform would be helpful. We need to get behind President Trump. He spoke in Detroit, yet I also don't see anything from your group about that. Are you an anti-Trumper? Now, think about this. I have, for the past 4 years, been fighting for election integrity. Starting from day one at Rescue Michigan, authoring 7 election integrity bills, sending out email after email, recruiting hundreds of poll workers, if not thousands by now. And this person's received our emails for the past 2 years saying, become a poll worker, become a poll worker, become a poll worker, support Trump, become a poll worker, save the election. And so now one email saying, hey, the state legislature is important too. Are you never Trumper? There's people out there that are just itching for a fight, itching for a reason to hate you. Now, this person is not a precinct delegate, thank God, by the way, not in my county party. But do you think this person knocks on doors to save our country? I mean, it is a little more than a little frustrating when somebody who, eats bonbons and complains about the Democrats attacks people for the ones who spend, hours and hours and hours every day doing this stuff. It's frustrating. Just saying. Yes, they don't read. They don't read. Anyway, where were we? Back to this lawsuit. Richard says Richard said I'm trying to report every one of these to these different agencies. Count 1. Libel, slander, and defamation. Plaintiffs restate and reincorporate as if set forth fully here in all preceding allegations contained in this complaint. The complaints published by Ritchard were routinely disseminated by Ritchard on Facebook and other social media platforms. Richard's defamatory statements about plaintiffs were gratuitously made and served no other purpose than to embarrass, humiliate, harm, and cause plaintiffs financial loss. These defamatory statements were not relevant, material, or pertinent to any dispute involving plaintiffs. Ritchard, presumably because of a desire for self-promotion, publicity, his infatuation with Karamo, nice, and or money, decided to publishing salacious and scandalous articles and social media statements that state directly, meant to say, or imply that plaintiffs were having an affair, even though they had no actual basis or facts to make such allegations. And we skipped over them, but clearly they were, in many, many cases, implying they were having an affair. On February 19, 2024, plaintiff's attorney sent a cease and desist letter to Ritchard demanding they stop making such statements. Ritchard just does a letter to the cease and desist. We saw that. Ritchard responded, essentially mocking the letter, demand for retraction, demand for preservation, and refusing to stop his actions. Astonishingly, Ritchard, which, since this guy loves to call names, Ritchard kind of is close to retard. Not the medical condition that you would not want to use to insult somebody, but like the Italian word for slowing down in music, the ritardando. CJ Ritchard, slowing down. Not questioning his mental fitness, just a word. Has brazenly repeated these false allegations and plaintiffs by refusing to stop his actions, but instead has continued to publish similar statements to others in the community, thereby making false statements about plaintiffs accessible to the public where they have been available for anyone to see. So you have to have defamation, a false statement made by the speaker to a third party that has caused damage, unless it's per se, and often knowingly false is required because if it's a public figure, which again, the problem is courts are bad about defamation law. If CJ has a good attorney, which will cost him money, that's what their first move is going to do, is to argue that none of this caused any real damages. This is all just political hyperbole. And therefore there's no real anything here. And they don't plead fact sufficient to make a case. So we'll see. The issue that CJ is going to have is with the defamation per se. Ritchard's statements accusing plaintiffs of, how do I change this rectangle to not be filling in? That didn't work. Hold on. It's driving me bonkers. How do I go to a normal fill here? That does not work. Okay. I don't have a highlighting cursor for some reason. I screwed that up in Adobe. Ritchard's statements accusing plaintiffs of having an affair thus being a felon. Oh, yeah, that's kind of a stretch. Saying you're having an affair is technically legally a felony in Michigan under an archaic statute that's not enforced. But that's what they're arguing here. False and defamatory per se, and utter fabrications that Ritchard negligently and or maliciously published and dispersed with knowledge that they were false or with reckless disregard for their truth or falsity. Ritchard is not a journalist. Plaintiff has never had an affair. Plaintiff Bria Mogenberg is not a homewrecker. She is not a harlot. She is not Andy Seibolt's side piece. Plaintiffs are not guilty of adultery. They are not criminals. They have not engaged in criminal behavior. They have not engaged in witness tampering. This is one that probably should have been hammered on harder, but it was in there somewhere, I'm sure. Plaintiffs are not aligned with BLM. They do not lack reason. They do not seek to destroy. That's not really defamatory. Plaintiffs are not engaged in fundraising through sources similar to BLM. Plaintiffs do not visit brothels or bordellos. Plaintiffs are not fake Republicans. They are not traitors. They are not mass murderers. That must have been in there somewhere. That's another, again, that's another one, per se. Very, very, very important. Plaintiff Bria Mogenberg is not a threat to children. She does not create a bad environment for children or the elderly around her. Plaintiffs are not corrupt or immoral. They are not downright evil people. They are not Satan incarnate. They do not have fetishes whereby they are attracted to unicorns. They're not narcissists. They do not have serious personality disorders. They do not suffer from psychological deficiencies, and they do not have cult-like mental conditions. They do not suffer from DSM-5 conditions. They do not have multiple personalities. They're not engaged in polyamory or multiple partners. They did not embezzle $250,000. Again, per se, embezzlement. Critical element. Plaintiffs have not engaged in Federal RICO Act violations. Plaintiffs have not attacked or assaulted Ritchard. Again, per se. They're not engaged in the conspiracy against Ritchard. They do not engage in sexual threesomes. Bria Mogenberg is not friends with Gretchen Whitmer. Plaintiffs are not members of any company or group named Liars, Losers, and Cheats, LLC. The various names used by Ritchard to describe plaintiffs are defamatory, including but not limited to Ass Seibolt, Andi, Brie like the cheese, Princess Leia, Mogen, David Berg, Brie Day, Big Ball Daddy, Brie Wine, The Cowardly Lion, Andy Seabutts, Anal Platypus, Hair Lot, Altar Girl, Brie the Stale Cheese. There it is. The various pictures of plaintiffs used by Ritchard in which he altered and converted to videos are defamatory. Although plaintiffs have provided Ritchard with written demand for a retraction, Ritchard has refused to issue a public retraction of the false and defamatory statements. Ritchard's defamatory falsehoods have improperly sullied the reputation of the plaintiffs. As Chief Justice Warren aptly expressed it over 50 years ago, freedom of the press under the First Amendment does not include an absolute license to destroy lives or careers. That quote is nice, but they have to show more if they're going to, other than use defamation per se. Ritchard has intentionally defamed and damaged plaintiffs, presumably to create a name for himself, generate widespread publicity, perpetuate his infatuation with Karamo, and for his own financial gain. This is unconscionable, and Ritchard should be held accountable. Should be held accountable is not a legal standard. Missing some chats on Rumble. Hans says, Rumble chat is slow tonight. No more dogs on roof of cars. Glad to see Mitch Romney time and Republicans is coming to an end. Some things we were talking about earlier. What crime did they say did to be defamation per se? That was probably written a while ago, and I think we just got it to it there. Defamation per se would be attacking, assaulting, RICO violations, mass murderers. Traitor probably wouldn't qualify because it's hyperbolic. Witness tampering and just calling them criminals. And technically adultery, but that's a stretch. Betty Nelson says, Adam, I've followed you for years. Thank you for teaching people like me. I may not always agree, but there's no other programs I know of that do what you do. Thank you, Betty. I talk a lot on stream, and I say a lot of things that a lot of people don't agree with. So thank you guys for bearing with me. We were talking earlier about Nick Rekieta and the show that he originally was covering, which is this show, called the Dick Show with Dick Masterson. I stopped watching that. I stopped listening to that show. You know why? He said something I didn't agree with. When Kyle Rittenhouse was arrested, Dick was like, oh, he shouldn't have been there. And he was blaming Kyle, and conservatives are stupid for siding with Kyle Rittenhouse and yada, yada. I basically I lost interest in the show. I didn't like it because I suddenly didn't like the guy anymore, That's how it is, folks. We hear things we don't like, and we go away from them. And that's also a big problem in politics and in thinking in general. Is we're emotional and not intellectual. And when people say things we don't like, we the easiest thing to do is just to stop listening and not engage. So thank you for bearing with me, guys, when you don't agree with me. I really do appreciate that. And it's funny because then Nick ended up becoming a big celebrity covering the Kyle Rittenhouse case. So figure that out. And now Dick is defending Nick on the internet. So it's all a big circle. Circle something. Don says CJ has gone after Bree's business over and over. She is a licensed child care provider in the state of Michigan. Furthermore, On Breeze is the name of her business, and he uses it. Back in February of 2023, when he says Bree attacked him, he actually said he reported her to the FBI, and she called him a bully for going after a single mom and a business owner. Many falsehoods have been spoke, and it has made life extremely difficult for Bree, having to worry about a man that stalks her online. And the comment goes on, but not where I can see it. And I'll take that all at your word, Don, but unfortunately, the court only looks at what's in the four corners of this document here. And if there's other stuff that should be in here, they may not be able to get it in later. So, if you guys think there's things missing, and again, defamation law is really hard to begin with because A, it's hard to prove something crosses a line, and B, very few judges really understand the law very well. And it's really easy to go to a judge and say, Your Honor, my First Amendment. So they need to make a really strong, rock solid case that these things were defamatory per se and or damaging. Anyway, where were we? We read all this. Ritchard has intentionally defamed and damaged plaintiffs, presumably to create a name for himself. Okay, I read that. Plaintiffs bring this action for the purpose of at least partially preserving and restoring their good name and reputation, as well as recovering the significant damages that they have suffered. This is important also, by the way, this paragraph, because one defense to defamation suits is, Your Honor, these people's reputation was damaged so much by other things and other people that my client had nothing to do with it. They were I forget the term is, but they're like below they're like undefamable because their already reputation is so bad. Like anybody could attack Alex Jones because his reputation is so bad that you couldn't have made it any worse. So it's important to say they had a good name that was harmed. Ritchard knew that dispersing the letters, ramblings, and social media posts to members of the community would cause a buzz within the community and cause plaintiffs' clients to reconsider their relationship with plaintiffs or influence Seabolt's divorce proceedings, thus causing the letters, ramblings, and social media posts to be broadcast to a larger audience. Ritchard's claim that the plaintiff Bree Mogenberg should not be around children or elderly have harmed her daycare business. I'm not an attorney in Michigan, guys, so don't count me as an expert. But again, in a lot of states, and I know it varies. In some states, you have to have a showing to get your case into court, and these things can come out in discovery. In some states, your initial complaint's got to have everything in it. I hope that's not the case here. But for the purpose also of every document trying to persuade as best it can, it might be good to have included these things in there anyway. Indeed, Ritchard states in his February 29th, 2024 letter, additionally, there is much that is likely to come out about Mr. Seabolt and Ms. Mogenberg in the trial involving Andrew's wife, and that is about all I can say at this time. And that's Exhibit 11, which is another one of CJ's posts. So here's an email from CJ to Matt DePerno, ceasing the Attorney General of Michigan. Mr. DePerno, what kind of people do this? And there's the letter. And there's his, I guess, is an FU to the cease and desist letter. So there we go. So that's all in there. If you want to read that, go to the video on demand on YouTube or Rumble and pause the video. I just scrolled through it. By the way, Carl Kirsch said, I like and optimism of the grassroots groups growing rapidly, but grassroots is a small group. Perhaps there should be a movement to be more inclusive. I do think that if we can get good majorities, then some of the weaker amongst the party will be more emboldened to do the right thing. I know grassroots people that didn't want to support Wahlberg as well as Tudor. To me, that's a bit nuts. Does anyone think that the above listed candidates' opponents would be better? Whitmer. I don't want to go off on too much of a tangent here, Carl. I know you read this a while ago. So I'll just say, see my previous remarks. People have to fight this stuff because it doesn't just go away. It's conservatives' good nature to want to just turn the other cheek and move on And the reality is you can't unify with cancer. you can't ignore a disease that's fatal. This stuff festers when it doesn't get addressed. Because when you ignore them and don't call their shit out, they turn more and more people against you. So it has to be confronted, in my humble opinion. Maybe I'm wrong. Anyway, where were we? The defamatory statements in the attached exhibits are false. The publication and distribution of the letters, ramblings, and social media posts were not privileged. The letters, ramblings, and social media posts were written by Ritchard without conducting any investigation into the facts or certainty of the allegations. That's going to the reckless disregard for the truth. At the time Ritchard created the letters, ramblings, and social media posts and subsequently distributed them, he was aware that plaintiffs had not engaged in the false conduct alleged or implied. In fact, Ritchard has no evidence to support his claims in the letters, ramblings, and social media posts. In response to plaintiffs' demand for retraction, Ritchard has never produced any document that supported these unfounded, scurrilous, or defamatory claims. Defamatory statements in the letters, ramblings, and social media posts that were published and distributed are defamation per se. The defamatory statements in the letters, ramblings, and social media posts that were published and distributed are defamation by implication. Ritchard negligently and or maliciously published and distributed the defamatory statements about plaintiffs with actual knowledge of the falsity of the statements or with reckless disregard for the truth or falsity. Again, that's an element of defamation, or an element of actionable defamation. The defamatory statements were hold plaintiffs up to hatred, scorn, contempt, and or ridicule, and were made with malicious intent. Again, malice, another element you need, especially with a public figure, which you shouldn't hear, but again, courts. The false and defamatory statements by Ritchard are naturally and obviously damaging the plaintiff's reputation and have damaged their reputation. Again, I wish they show more, but they might not have to. I could be wrong about this. Betty says, never imagine being sued for political views. Exactly the reason I haven't been involved and continue to stay in the back. Yeah, it's, folks, politics is a contact sport. And the only way you can avoid being attacked is to not be important. And that sucks. That's the way it is. I'm being attacked by some individuals in my county. It's the way it goes. It's the nature of the game. And I'm sorry, folks, but, you know, like I said in other streams, people have suffered far worse for freedom than we have. The name calling, and some of this goes obviously way over that line in towards actually harm to people. This is stalking. You know, this is real. This is the real world. And stuff that happens on the internet gets into the real world too. That's the way that goes. In addition to impairing plaintiff's reputation and causing plaintiffs lost standing in the community, the false and defamatory statements have caused plaintiffs to suffer personal humiliation, mortification, embarrassment, mental anguish, and emotional distress. I don't doubt it. Though utterly false, the defamatory and false statements have created suspicion the plaintiffs are adulterous people, that they have mental disorders, should not be around children or the elderly, that they are criminals or engaged in criminal behavior, and can commit multiple felonies or other unethical conduct. Again, always good in the per se stuff is good. Such statements will or could impact plaintiffs' names and the value of their names by creating the false impression that they are engaged in adultery and are criminals capable of committing a felony and or unethical conduct. Such statements have also resulted in potential economic loss and other damages that are still being determined. Ritchard continues to post defamatory statements about plaintiffs on a daily basis, and he will not stop. Plaintiffs have encouraged, by the way, assuming CJ lawyers up, and lawyers bill by the hour, and lawyers typically will need to review everything. If a lawyer says, I've got to review all of your social media posts, they may have a problem because CJ posts about 100 times a day. So, yeah, he may have some problems on his hands here, but we'll see. We'll see where this goes. We'll see if he lawyers up, and we'll see how he answers this. Plaintiffs are entitled to exemplary and punitive damages. Maybe. As a direct and proximate cause of Ritchard's actions and conduct, plaintiffs have suffered damages in an amount of no less than $250,000 for the injury sustained, plus additional damages as may be proven to compensate them for the loss and damages demanded in this complaint, plus exemplary and punitive damages, together with interest, costs, and actual attorney's fees incurred in maintaining this matter and for such further relief as this court deems appropriate. Randy says he posted about Bree and Andy today. Not surprisingly. The damages. Again, I am not an attorney, so I'm not going to pretend to be one. Sooner or later, this is going to have to be shown, except for the per se part. But then, that may come much, much later at some kind of award stage. But obviously, they haven't shown in this document how this damage amounts to $250 or more. Count 2, civil stalking. Plaintiff restate and reincorporate as if all the other things we said. So that's, you always have to have this with counts. Prohibited by MCL 600.2954 and constituted stalking as defined by Michigan law. Let's see. Here is the Michigan statute on stalking. One sec. A victim may maintain a civil action against an individual who engages in conduct that is prohibited under another section. For damages incurred by a victim as a result of that conduct, a victim may also be okay. So that doesn't tell us anything. Okay. Well, oh well. Let's go back to this suit. Let's assume that it's true. How about that? You would think. I mean, if this isn't civil stalking, what is? I mean, I guess it could get more intense, like saying, "I will be at your house, picking up your kids tomorrow," or something like that. I don't know. Ritchard's actions were willful and directed toward plaintiff. Ritchard's course of conduct involved repeated and continuous harassment directed towards plaintiffs, including other things, coordinating surveillance. Didn't see that in the exhibits, but we skipped over some things. Following plaintiffs, reporting their whereabouts, that may have been in there, publishing false and misleading letters, ramblings, and social media posts that caused emotional distress and mental anguish. Ritchard's repeated and continuous harassment of plaintiffs would cause a reasonable person to feel terrorized, threatened, frightened, intimidated, harassed, and molested. Good point. Ritchard's conduct, as described above, is a pattern of harassing or intimidating behavior. Clearly, it is. As Randy said, this is every single day. Every single day that goes. These are all things that might be underscored in a response to a motion to dismiss. Ritchard's conduct, described as above, took place in a public media forum, meaning the internet or any other medium designed or intended to convey information to other individuals, regardless of whether membership or password is required to view the information. So he's attacking them in public, making the plaintiffs feel terrorized, threatened, etc. Again, targeted victim, continued harassments, no consent. That's a direct and proximate cause of Ritchard's stalking. Retard stalking. Plaintiffs have suffered damages, mental anguish, physical and emotional distress, humiliation, etc. Same thing as before. Cyber stalking, and there's going to be a restating of all the same stuff again. Invasion of privacy, and plaintiffs have a privacy interest. Publication of misleading and defamatory letters. Unwanted intrusion upon plaintiff's seclusion of solitude into his private affairs. Maybe. These are now kind of tack on things. It's all to the essence of one thing essentially, but there's also, you always throw as much as you can at it. And this is all kind of a restating of the same stuff. So we've got that. Tortious interference with business relationships. Again, these are now the same thing, but getting to weaker and weaker claims, because how do you show that they lost business because of what he said? Might take, court might say, well, prove it. What business did you lose? And obviously they're saying, well, we don't know because they didn't. Tortious interference is hard to prove. Intentional infliction of emotional distress, again, hard to prove. You have a doctor's note? Probably not. Negligence and negligent infliction of emotional distress, even harder to prove. So, but you guys get the idea. All the same thing. Libel, slander, stalking. Those are the big ones. Intimidation and impersonation of officer. Chances are a law enforcement agency has had this brought to their attention and chose not to act. Probably. My guess is that CJ saying, I'm going to tell the FBI on you doesn't imply anything. And that CJ listing FBI as his workplace probably isn't strong enough. But maybe it is. Maybe it is. Maybe that's for a court to decide. When a court costs a lot of money. They constituted witness intimidation because of their relationship to the Karamo case. Strong argument. Probably should be front and center, not buried in here, but there it is. It's there. That's the most important thing. And again, damages $250,000. Conspiracy and concert of actions. Chat, help me out if I've missed something here, because I didn't see anything where CJ was acting in concert with other people. A common design at all relevant times, engaged in concerted actions to send the misleading and defamatory letters. Plaintiffs are not able to identify all the activities of Ritchard due to the generic similarity of such activities engaged in and promoted by Ritchard and or an agent thereof, but have provided details herein the many activities engaged in and promoted by Ritchard. And have sustained again, I didn't see anything that named those damages. And I didn't see anything, unless I missed something, of where there was a conspiracy. It seems like this is all just CJ. Anyway, all the same stuff, and we want a judgment in favor and amount no less than an amount to be determined later, but it's at least $250,000. Signed by Law Office of Matt DePerno. Date May 23rd. So I would assume by now notice has already happened. So who knows? Maybe we will soon see a response from CJ. Maybe we won't. Maybe it'll be a default. I don't know. I'd love to know more about where this case goes. I imagine we'll talk about it more as it develops. But there it is. I am not an attorney. I will not pretend to have an expert legal analysis of it, other than to say that from the other defamation suits I have seen on Nick's stream, defamation is tough to prove. However, it is also a big pain in the dick to go to court over all this stuff, and CJ will have a good time with that and explaining all this stuff to an attorney. So one way or the other, this will not be fun for him. Although he seems to be having fun now, but it won't be fun when he gets a legal bill or a judgment. So we'll see. We'll see where all this goes. I don't know anything about CJ's personal financial situation, so who knows? But with lawsuits, nobody can afford them. So that's the end of that. So there we go, folks. That was fun. We will keep up with that story as it develops. And it's good to see people fighting back against these folks. Because, again, guys, why cover this stuff when we have an election to win? Because that's an additional burden that we have to bear, folks. Because if you don't fight back on these on these fronts, they're making gains there too. And we've talked about this on the show before. This is a swing state in a presidential election. You think that the destruction of the state party, the GOP, the antagonizing of conservative activists is not a part of the agenda to lose the election for the Republicans? You don't think that's part of this? You don't think there's any kind of coordinated state action behind some of this stuff? Because why would there not be? Oh, yeah, the FBI didn't think of that. This CJ guy seems to have a lot of buddies at the FBI. At least he claims he does. We'll see. We'll see. All right, well, that'll do it for us for tonight. We will have another show, an actual show about the regular stuff, you know, Operation Watchdog legislation. Some bad bills passed last week. We'll talk about them. A lot of World War III news, too. So tune in tomorrow at 9 p.m. for our regularly scheduled program, Rescue Michigan Weekly live stream. Thank you guys for joining us tonight. It has been fun and a bit exhausting. Thank you guys also for keeping Nick in your prayers. And until next time, thanks for all you for liberty. Oh, and by the way, happy Male Identifying Guardian and Guardian Figures Appreciation Day. So there's that too. All right, guys, that'll do it for us for tonight. As always, thanks for all you do for liberty. Until then, peace.